The Bunzerelly Show has been nominated for Orlando Weekly's 2018's Best Local Podcast. Go to Bunzerelly.com for more information and a direct link to vote. The following podcast contains spoilers for AntMan, as well as Infinity War.
You gave her wings and blasters. So I take it you didn't have that tech available for me? No, I did.
This is the Bunzerelly Show.
Following up on 2015's AntMan, AntMan and the Wasp, probably the palate cleanser we needed after that hard and heavy stuff from Infinity War. So a nice, action-packed movie. First things I want to do is I want to welcome Jacob to the show. First-timer, Jacob, thanks for coming on.
Oh, I thank you very much. I'm very excited.
We just both came out of the theater, and these are fun when you're just fresh out and you got a lot of thoughts in your head. So, Jacob, what'd you think about the movie?
Sure. What you just mentioned, palate cleanser. I was very surprised how funny the movie was.
Yes.
I found it a lot funnier than almost any of the other Marvel movies so far.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Rudd, he plays it so well. He's such a goofy guy, making me laugh all the time. Yeah, I thought it was great. I was very entertained, very fun.
Well, it's funny, but it's consistent. They set that tone in the first movie because it's Ant-Man. It's going to be silly. You can't take that so seriously what they're doing. He's blowing these cars up and shrinking and going big and down. But the cool thing was the funny thing was they explained all that mumbo jumbo in the first movie, and I forgot a lot of these explanations for how this stuff worked, but I didn't even give a shit because it was like, all right, I'm on board. I know they explained it once, whatever. It's like you're on board for the ride, so it's kind of cool because it hits the ground running. And what I liked that they did was they opened up with the Wasp introduction first, and then Ant-Man kind of kicks into gear, and it was like two reveals, like new costume, Ant-Man.
Sure. He was kind of bumming it around at home, not doing anything, while the Wasp she's very trained. She's, she knows what she's doing. And that very first action scene where she's, doing the exchange with the money and the part that they needed.
And they recapped everything really well because, it was 2015. It's the first Ant-Man. And Ant-Man isn't the kind of movie that you watch over and over. It's not Star Wars. So they recapped it in bits and pieces. I totally forgot they trained the hand-to-hand combat back-to-back. And, obviously, the understanding with Hope and Dr. Pym, they kind of recapped that real quick. In the beginning, there was a lot of tension between the three of them. And I was at one point, I was like, look, the dude's helping you. Get off his back already. What do you want from the guy? He said he was sorry.
Yeah, it took him. He had to gain their trust back because he really hurt them. I guess it was off screen when he went to during the whole Civil War thing. He stole the suit. And that was his life's work. And he really hurt them. And you didn't realize that while that was happening.
Well, they kind of put the pieces together without just smothering it in your face, which was good. I mean, it's a hard thing to do. It's hard to take all these little things and weave them together. You got to make it accessible to the people that haven't seen every movie, but then you have to respect the people that have seen all the movies. And I think they balanced that well. I think if you didn't come in seeing everything, you would have been okay.
Right.
But they put all the pieces together real quick. Now this Ghost villain, that was something different. What did you think about her?
I did a little reading beforehand because, I want to go into the movie with some knowledge, refresh myself. The Ghost character was interesting. She needed help.
Yeah.
And she going about it the wrong way of doing things. You had Lawrence Fishburne's character, Dr. Bill Foster, which I was surprised, it's kind of like a father-daughter relationship they had going on, that you kind of piece together. And he really wants to help her. He cared for her. He can help her, so he wants to help her. Yeah,
and that's another the thing of the recaption. It's like they put you in his shoes really quick, and it's kind of like that Loki thing, but even more to the extreme where Loki, you made a lot of your mess yourself. But this girl was really put in the situation. And even though she was turned into that monster, it's like Lawrence Fishburne's character, his what's the word? The compassion for her and understanding of her. They brought you to that relationship real quick. And it's like that villain that's and we've said it over and over again, it's like the villain that you could understand where they're coming from is the best villain. And not to jump ahead too much, but even at the end, that kind of corny ending was okay because it was like there was so many other pieces of the puzzle happening at the same time. So it was like you had that heist and the anticipation, suspense. So even when you had that kind of, it was like nice to see that happy ending for her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, I don't know how to say it. It wasn't like,
it was better that she didn't get a comeuppance.
Like I wouldn't want to see her blown apart at the end. You know what I'm saying? Because she really did get a raw deal. So I'm glad at the end she was happy and safe. What exactly happened? Did she? It just showed her that she disappeared, right? There was no.
Dr. Foster, he wanted to stay with her and help her. She was going to run off. She's like, just leave me behind. I've done a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
It's better off if you don't stick with me. And he cares about her very much. Like I said, they embraced at the end. He says, no, we're going to make it. We are going to make it. He didn't want to leave her by herself because.
Okay, so that's where they left off. I couldn't remember if they got arrested, which is cool because she could play a part down the road.
Right. I read that of the myriad of villains, in the Marvel universe, not a major villain in the comics. I from what I understand, it's
I've never heard of her.
A minor, yeah. She's a minor villain. I don't know what exactly her roles are in the comics, but like I said, she's not. So have you heard of the villain Eggman or Egghead?
I've never, tell you the truth, I've never read Ant-Man until these movies came out.
So Egghead is the main guy that's always stopping Ant-Man or Dr. Pym specifically, I guess.
Okay.
That was his adversary is Eggman. He's another very smart, scientist and always doing villainous things with his science. And that is like, Batman and Joker, Superman and Lex,
So he's Ant-Man's nemesis, basically.
Yeah. One of the Ant-Mans. Ant-Man is a mantle that the various people take up.
Now, let me ask you about that because I am not well-versed in Ant-Man. Is that true to the comics? Because the way I always knew was Henry Pym was Ant-Man. Like what I'm saying is the Scott Lang character in the comics, does that actually happen? Or is that something that just kind of took a liberty for the movie?
It does. Scott Lang is one of the Ant-Men.
Okay, so it's like Green Lantern. There has been different Ant-Men.
There's different Ant-Men. And currently in the comic books, so there's been 4 Ant-Men's. Okay. So you got Doctor, you got the Doctor, you got Paul Rudd's character. There's another guy who stole the suit, was a low-level SHIELD agent, and he took the suit and he abused it. He abused the power. He was a scummy guy. He always stole to make his way through his life, get himself ahead, and he used his powers to entice women and it wasn't he wasn't exactly a superhero, he just abused the power. Right. The scummy guy. And then, eventually he was killed, in one manner or another. And currently, from what I understand, is that the suit was stolen. Again, the suit always gets stolen for some reason. Everybody wants the technology. And now there's the Black Ant. And the Black Ant is, I don't know if he's an anti-hero, if he's just straight up a villain. But that's where it's at right now. It's
currently happening.
Yeah. Nothing good is happening with Ant-Man right now. Like, not saying the story isn't good, but I'm saying, like, good guy.
Gotcha. But he kind of is anyway. Even like Scott Lang's character is kind of like a torn character. I mean, like I said, he's just that one screw up where he told his buddy where he was. I know. Really, dude? I was like, are you serious?
What a bonehead kind of move, yeah.
Like all this intricate stuff going on, and you wanted to help your friend with your business project. You're on the run from the FBI. Like the whole audience is like, what?
But that's one facet of his character. He's putting people over himself. Like he wants to help. He just wants to help.
And the daughter kind of justified it with that conversation. I like that they kept that stepmom stepdad relationship stuff. Some of the stuff they brought in the first movie. He's definitely a cool character, like because he doesn't have a heroic origin like Captain America or Spider-Man and everything.
The latest Thor movie, where Thor from the first couple of movies, he's very, he's like this. He's a mythological figure,
Yeah.
He uses thine and verily, and, he's very... You expect him to be a certain way, and then by the time Ragnarok rolls around, he's very goofy.
Yes.
He changed,
I kind of get it to a point, because Thor was cool, his character was cool, but I think Thor was better in Avengers than he was in the Thor movies. It always felt to me like the Thor movies were like, let's get these Thor movies out of the way in between the next Avengers movie. And especially like Thor 2, we're all waiting for Loki. And it's always, oh yeah, Loki, let's see the fallout from the Loki thing.
Right.
Because Loki was the best part of Thor. And by the time the third movie came, it was like, okay, we're going to do the same stuff again with Thor because I don't know, it's just that, like, it was kind of necessary for Thor, that character rebrand. It was drastic, don't get me wrong, but I guess a character like that being goofy, whereas you take Ant-Man, he's starting out goofy.
He's already like that. Yeah.
And not taking himself. So maybe, like, Thor, they decided the time to turn the ship. But then again, Thor, he still has that power, and that stuff's carried over into Infinity War, like that power and that presence. But the humor, they kind of just threw it in there because, like, this guy, you can't be too serious about this.
Right. And to me, it did feel like it was thrown in there in the third movie. But then there's kind of the argument that he spent a lot of time on Earth and a lot of time around, like, really sarcastic people, jokey people. Tony Stark, he's very snappy and witty, and maybe he picks up things from that, spending so much time around other people, not the people that he's typically around, in Asgard.
But yeah, it is a drastic turn on Thor, but I think it was almost like a character refresh that had to happen.
Sure.
Because I don't, like, Tony Stark has been, I'm agreeing with you, but I kind of understand why they did it, because Tony Stark has been consistent. Iron Man's been the same in every movie. And these are different writers and different directors and everything. So it's like, but he never seems out of character, even if his movies aren't as good, like Iron Man 3 or something, just like a kind of a coasting movie. Now, Captain America, he's always been consistent too. The one thing about Captain America, his first movie was kind of like, felt to me like, okay, let's show you Captain America and get him in there because we're making this Avengers thing happen. Like, it was the last one. It was after Thor. But all of a sudden, Captain America took off with the momentum from Winter Soldier.
Right.
That was the Russo brothers. And then he did Civil War, which was like the soft open for Avengers.
Sure.
Because when Joss Whedon, he got, like, burnt out of Avengers, and they just gave it to the Russo brothers because, it was a smaller scale with it was the practice run, the Civil War, and they brought it into Infinity War. But yeah, Ant-Man's been Ant-Man for 3 movies, if you count Civil War. Like, he's just fumbling in and out of trouble, and it's been consistent. It's been Ant-Man.
Another thing that you jarred my memory, you brought up is it the third Iron Man movie, Age of Ultron?
No, that was the second Avengers movie.
One? Gotcha. Funny little fact that I learned, they switched it up for the cinematic aspect. I don't know why, but Ultron was originally Hank Pym's creation.
Yes, in the comics. Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. And why was there no Hank Pym in any of these other movies beforehand? Well, it's going to be hard to throw Hank Pym in there out of nowhere for Ultron,
Yeah, I think Ant-Man was after Age of Ultron. But yeah, because I know the storyline, because it's actually even though that's the title, it's the title from the storyline, but it's not what the storyline is.
Right.
You might know more about it than me, but from my understanding of the Age of Ultron storyline, it's the same thing. Because Age of Ultron had nothing to do with the storyline. It was just the title. The Age of Ultron was Ultron takes over the world. Like, Ultron wins.
Right.
And then it's actually a really cool storyline because there's not this Fox and everything happening. In the comics, everybody's in the same universe. So it's actually, from the little I've researched on it, it was like a really cool sounding storyline where Henry Pym creates Ultron. They just switched that over to Iron Man. They made a tweak in the storyline. But in this Age of Ultron storyline, Ultron takes over, so Wolverine and the Invisible Woman go back in time and kill Henry Pym. Which is, like, for Wolverine's another day's work, but for, like, Susan Storm, that was some pretty, like, that's a dark turn. But I forget how that storyline ended already, but it was something like, it was another one of those dark, like, alternate universe things.
Right.
But like I said, it was just, they moved that over in title only. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's just the impact for the movie. But Age of Ultron, Age of Apocalypse, like, the impact title. Like, oh, they're doing it! Like, even like Infinity War. Infinity War is, the actual comic is called Infinity Gauntlet. Infinity War is actually like a cheesier sequel, but Infinity War just sounds better.
Right.
But those are the liberties they take.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, throwing it, I think a lot of people do know the character Ultron, even if they're not heavily into comics or, what have you. I think Ultron's a pretty big villain in the Marvel universe, and I don't know what else they could have done for Iron Man story,
I'm weird on Iron Man. I feel like Iron Man's story gets better with the movies that aren't Iron Man movies. You know what I'm saying? Because and I'll tell you something, I love War Machine from the comics, and I went into 2 like, I love War Machine. Oh, they're doing War Machine, hooray! Like I got the War Machine miniseries, and I was like all about War Machine. Mm-hmm. I just like the idea of a more military version of Iron Man.
Sure. And
when I watch Iron Man 2 again and again, I just kind of fast forward to that part where he's back to back with War Machine. Because our movie's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And 3 was just, I don't know about 3. 3 had no impact.
I know, because I hardly remember it right now.
Exactly. It was just like this storyline.
He had a bunch of other suits that was, where were they at? They were on an oil rig or something?
Yeah, he had suits all over the place, but he blows them all up. But when he blows them all up, you know the teaser for Avengers 2 is already, or 3 is already out. So it's like, none of this means anything. But I like how his storyline carries through the Avengers movie. But the most impactful stuff with Tony Stark is the ramifications of his creating Ultron.
Yeah.
And that carries into Infinity War, and it also carries into his relationship with Spider-Man in Civil War. Like, the best Iron Man story, if you had to weave it together, you don't need Iron Man 2 and 3. You need, like, Iron Man 2, Avengers, Civil War, and Spider-Man. And that's the great, like, Iron Man saga, which is going to keep going forward because I don't know where Iron Man's going to go down in the future. I mean, he's the longest-running character and actor. And I don't know what's in store for him.
Well,
but
in the comics, I mean, where else is he going to go? He goes pretty far. I mean, the scales of these conflicts just keep expanding and expanding to like the universe and multiverses, and he makes God-killing machines and things like that. It just gets so crazy,
Yeah.
So I don't know where Phase 4 is going to go for these movies. After Infinity War.
It's hard because Infinity War is next year. So the ramifications of what's going to happen and how that gets resolved is going to go forward. But I believe Iron Man's going to play a big part of that. But I don't know if that's going to end his saga and if that's the time. Kind of like Logan. Like Wolverine went out on a high note on his terms.
Right.
And Wolverine, and you compare Wolverine with Iron Man because the movies, you could say, have had a rocky road. He's been in some good ones and some stinkers, not by his fault or the character. Different, right? Yeah. But he ended on his terms, on his note. So, like, how does Iron Man end? And I always thought to myself, like, if he decides to go out, I think he's worthy of his own, like, a 4th solo movie for that purpose. Right. Almost like call it Tony. Like, make him go out. What Iron Man 3 was trying to be. Like, Iron Man 3 was trying to be, but we all knew it wasn't happening. So it was like, but if that actor, if Robert Downey, because I'm just talking about Robert Downey Jr. being done with that character. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how Marvel's going to handle these things. Are they going to wipe the slate clean and recast? Eventually, they're going to have to recast somebody. Eventually, contracts are going to go up and stuff. So it's very curious to see. We're really not going to know until Infinity War, the second part of Infinity War, how those decisions are going to be made.
I don't think any movie will ever 100% follow how it's supposed to go in the comics, No,
and
because of things like that.
No, and I'm not a stickler for that.
Yeah.
And even like costumes and stuff, because it's like, people get mad at, you get your super sticklers that are mad that Wolverine's not in the yellow spandex. But it's like, how, if you really look at Wolverine's costume from the comics, how do you make that look cool? Like, how do you, like those things fanning off of his eyes and everything? Like, but who knows? We haven't seen it. I mean, I've seen it in Universal Studios, a guy in a little costume running around, but I don't know.
And then there's even more major things like, other studios and other companies own other names like the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
So Fantastic Four, they always play a really major role in the Marvel Universe in the comics, but we don't see them in the movies at all.
See, I had a funny theory, but it's already, Infinity War is already, that steam train's already a-rolling. Because I had a theory that because of somewhere in Infinity War, like the universe ramification changing, like the universe, before I even saw Infinity War, I thought like, okay, you're opening up the universe. Here's a chance to do things because of that potential, that Fox purchase by Disney. That I still actually don't know where it's at right now, but it was like they would have had X-Men and Fantastic Four, and I'm like, okay, here's your chance to bring them in. And even like X-Men's got this Dark Phoenix saga happening. Mm-hmm. And Dark Phoenix is this whole universe-changing thing. Right. And I had this vision in my head of like the Phoenix's finger touching Thanos' finger, kind of like the god, the Michelangelo. Yeah. I had that vision in my head. Also, everything's together, and then like Hugh Jackman comes back and he's standing next to Captain America. Which, okay, I don't think that's going to happen because these contracts are still. So who knows what's going to happen with that? But
anyways, to really back in towards AntMan, Stan Lee's cameo in the movie. Comment. What did he say? He something.
No, the '60s. Yeah, the drugs are '60s.
No, he said. I had too much fun in the '60s, and now I'm paying for it, or something like that. It's funny because when him, Jack Kirby, and something other Lyman, the three of them who they all created AntMan, right? And it was back in the '60s. Some of the early issues of Tales to Astonish, and so it was like a one-off kind of thing. Hank Pym. It was just like a funny little science fiction story. He made the Pym particle and he shrunk himself and he got stuck in an anthill, and that's really inspiration for the suit that controls, or not necessarily control, but he talks to the ants. So it actually got really popular, so they brought it back later on in the '60s.
It was like a throwaway story like that?
Yeah, it was like a little one-off story in the Tales to Astonish series.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was actually really popular and it sold really well, so they brought him back. And he was actually one of the founders of the original Avengers. Once I started learning all this stuff, that was really cool. It makes sense because Ant-Man, having been such one of the older superheroes from way back in the '60s, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of firsts happened with the Ant-Man. So when Hank Pym created Ultron, he used adamantium. That was the first time adamantium was introduced to the Marvel Universe.
Was it? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so they switched it to vibranium for the comics or something. I just know in the comics, vibranium is what his shield's made of.
I thought in the movies, Ultron was also made of adamantium.
No, they can't. Adamantium's in Marvel Fox now.
Right.
So maybe
that's right. Legal thing.
Yeah, maybe
So yes,
maybe he is in the comics, but yeah, there's no adamantium in the Marvel universe right now.
Movies right now. Right. So
that's over at Fox.
Sure.
Fox has the Simpsons and the adamantium.
That's funny. That's so funny. But yeah. So Ant-Man has been around forever. And
but I didn't know he was a throwaway story like that. I thought for some reason I had it in my head because Avengers is popular now because of the movies.
Right.
But really what it came down to is when Marvel sold off all their movie rights, which was Sony, they gave Spider-Man, which they worked that deal out just recently. I say recently, like 3 or 4 years. And, Fox's X-Men. But I just assumed... For some reason, I always thought Ant-Man was just always on the Avengers. Like when they had the Avengers book, Ant-Man was there. I didn't realize it was a throwaway story. And the reason why it's interesting is because that's how Spider-Man started. Spider-Man was a throwaway story. It was Amazing Fantasy 15. It was the book's last issue because the book was getting canceled.
Oh, wow.
And it was just Spider-Man on the cover. And it was Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. And Steve Ditko actually just recently passed away. But yeah, that's so funny because... it mirrors Spider-Man's thing. It was a throwaway issue. And that's how so many characters were created back then.
Well, yeah. You got something in your head, you jot it down, you write it down, and who knows if it takes off or it doesn't take off. And, I don't know where I heard it or read it, but Stan Lee had said that I don't think he was going to do anything with the character, Hank Pym. It was just something he made to throw into the comic at the time. It was the issue of the week kind of thing,
Well, those comics were so funny because it was Tales to Astonish, Amazing Fantasy. So it was just constant throwing spaghetti at the wall. It was just Stan Lee like, let me draw this guy. And even now, I've done some things where I've done some stuff with comic books where I'm trying to create like an original character, and it is seriously hard to draw somebody or design somebody that doesn't look like somebody else.
I would never even attempt to do something like that. Oh, this is dumb. This is stupid. I would never do it.
Oh yeah, no. When I was a kid, I made up some superheroes, and it's like I could see Gambit in this guy, and I could see Venom in this guy. It's like it is. Now the whole thing's been just like, which is funny because these original ideas like Ant-Man, who would have thought if this Avengers Marvel Universe thing never happened, they wouldn't have came out the box with Ant-Man.
Right.
Nobody would.
Not a flagship hero to
they wouldn't have opened up with Ant-Man, right. But because, and this is where the Marvel Universe is just, the cinematic universe has been a success because you're going and going. Even Black Panther was a D-list comic character. I can't remember there ever being a Black Panther comic book. I just remember like he'd appear in Avengers and he had a relationship with Storm from the X-Men and this and that. But they just, Marvel has laid this foundation, which is like, we'll trust whatever you throw at us. Like, seriously, I mean, that's been a lot of work. It's been 10 years of work. DC, I mean, DC is the opposite because DC is just like, let's just cram all this stuff in her face real quick. Here's Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man.
They have to catch up. That's what's going on. That's what I really think. They're trying so hard to catch up.
Oh, yeah, they were rushing and they stumbled. And the real shame of the DC, and you know what? Let us go. It's Ant-Man. Let's let this go all over the place. But the real shame of it is like, the real shame and the thing that's going on with DC is like, I really loved Henry Cavill's Superman. Mm-hmm. And I felt like he just kind of like got like pushed into the sand. And even Wonder Woman was like, really? That's, I don't know. It's just Marvel. I don't know what it is about Marvel. Iron Man in the comics was the weakest character, or one of the weakest. He looked great in the films, but in the comic book, he was pretty dorky. I mean, he wasn't Wolverine. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's why it's just so funny how they take their B-list and they just built this empire, like the success. And it's relevant to what we're talking about because, like, even Ant-Man, we're just like, more Marvel. And Ant-Man's just blowing up. And to tie it back is the way it tied in at the end with the Infinity War. So, like, looking forward, I'm very curious the way that movie ended. And there's going to be spoiler warnings on this, too. But it's like, what's Ant-Man? How does he get out of that situation he's in?
I don't know. Well, okay, so spoilers, right?
Yeah.
We all know that at some point, everyone's going to come back. It's going to happen, I think.
Yes.
At some point, maybe at the end of the second movie or maybe at the beginning of the second movie. So the other half of the universe that's left behind will have a chance to go up against Thanos.
Well, yeah, Marvel made that deal with Sony, so Spider-Man ain't going nowhere.
Right. So Nebula, right? That's the other daughter of Thanos.
Yes.
She gets a hold of the gauntlet, and she's crazed. She's been tortured, and she hates her father, Thanos, so much that even though it means undoing all of his work and what he's worked for and, destroying half the universe, that to spit in his face, she's going to reverse what he did because she has the gauntlet. So everybody comes back.
How does Ant-Man get out of that situation?
Right. So either they come back.
Who gets Ant-Man? That's what I'm saying. It's like
he either comes back right at the very moment when they disappeared.
Yeah.
Or maybe they all just appear in a big group in the field somewhere. Who knows? But maybe they'll know where they left him.
I'd like to more imagine because Ant-Man's in that quantum realm that he has access to something that could change something. But like I said, who gets him out? But
there was this little theory going around. So when he's traveling through that verse, he gets stuck in, all these like crazy vibrant colors and stuff. People saying it looks very, very, very similar to when Doctor Strange went up against Dormammu in that magical universe. It looks very similar. You put the two side by side, all the fantastical colors and shapes and stuff. And
Michelle Pfeiffer's character, let me look that up real quick. I don't even know if it's going to be on here because she was like in featuring.
So maybe he bumps into a character that way,
Because she did hint at something. We'll go with Hope's mom. Because I can't. But it's like
Mrs. Van Dyne.
Yes. But she hinted at a lot. She kind of laid a little bit of like piece of the puzzle at us. Like
she spent
things
so much
change
time
out
there.
here. Things change. Even like the power she had at the end. So there's definitely something that quantum realm.
It was almost like magic that she was using, right?
And all that stuff. And all that stuff comes together, like universes, magic, quantum, and it's like.
So who's to say that the realm that Dr. Pym stumbled upon isn't exclusively something that he's aware of?
No, I mean, if you have complete control over the universe, you should be able to tap into. Now, how? I'm more or less hoping that Ant-Man plays a role instead of just being like, "Oh, I'm out. I'm okay."
I've been stuck in my house
especially
the whole time.
Ant-Man sat out the first Infinity War, so I want to see him like play a role.
Right.
So, interesting stuff to see.
Right. He had the suit the whole time, right? He had it in his little trophy that his daughter got for him.
Yes.
So I'm just curious. Maybe he just didn't know that the Infinity War was going on. But why would you come out for the conflict in Sokovia and not come out for Battle for the Universe?
The scope of Infinity War actually happens in very quick moments. by the time they lose, that's actually happening at that moment in the after credits thing.
Right. You're right.
Everything because basically Infinity War is like 3 or 4 battles going on, and it culminates in one point. I don't know. I just feel like Ant-Man having access to what he had. I like him to be like the. I want to see him be like the guy with the answer, or at least in some small part.
You know what's interesting is that there might be the chance that they don't need the suit to change sizes, because if you spend enough time in the suit, it happened to Dr. Pym, it happened to Lang, and it happened to Van Dyne. Your body just starts naturally producing Pym particles, and I didn't read too much further beyond that, but your body just naturally produces Pym particles. You don't need the suit to put the Pym particles into you, take them out of you, what have you.
Ant-Man got into that quantum realm by himself before and got out of it. So just because they disappear doesn't mean he can't get himself out. So maybe that's what happens. So maybe he just gets himself out of that mess, because really it was an after credit scene for those of us that know what Infinity War was, and for those who don't, they'll just be like, what happened? And they'll find out in the next movie. So yeah, he might get himself out of that mess. It's very just like curious, because I can't see like at the end of everything everybody's like, well, we better find Ant-Man because he'll solve this.
Oh shoot! It's like I left the burner on the stove.
Yeah, it's like, did anybody hear from Ant-Man? Is he still here?
Yeah,
so,
I don't know. He's got that device in his hand that they were calling it healing
yes.
particles or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe he does something and he needs to use those, or he does this big drastic thing where he puts his life in danger and then he has to use the particles to heal himself. I don't know, spitballing,
Well, that's where we're at right now, because we're at. So this was the last Marvel movie before Infinity War, before the sequel to Infinity War, which will be next year. They're still not announcing it; they're just calling it Avengers 4. But we all know it's a sequel to Infinity War, because there's Spider-Man sitting there waiting on his bench. So this money train ain't a stopping. But really, a lot to think about. And we're going to see how all this plays out really next year. So, Jacob, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
I absolutely appreciate you allowing me to be on. I hope for future interactions like this.
Oh,
we'll
definitely.
Some more movies with you. We'll talk some more.
Definitely. We'll do this again.